Today we're going to be going over 4.5-inch grinder use and safety, belt sander use and safety, and also pedestal grinder use and safety. And I lumped these all together because these are all different ways you can remove material, remove welds, blend things, and stuff like that. So we'll start out with the safety on kind of all three of these, overarching safety. And that's anytime you're using those, you need to be wearing safety glasses, like I am right here. If you have any long hair that's to your shoulders or longer, you need to tie that back. These are going to be rotating about at, well, let me tell you, 11,000 RPMs. So if that grabs your hair and pulls your hair in, that's going to happen really fast, and you aren't going to be able to stop the grinder. Same with our belt sander and our pedestal grinder. Those rotate really fast. You don't want to get your hair sucked in. You need to be wearing a face shield anytime you're operating any three of those pieces of equipment. So that's the belt sander, the 4.5-inch grinder, or the pedestal grinders. And also, as you're using these, they're going to be spinning, right? And you don't want to walk away from a machine while it is still spinning. You need to make sure it stops all the way, and then you can leave. And along with that, you don't want to leave a machine as it is running. So if you start the belt sander up, if you walk away from it, I'm going to give you a safety warning for that. And the last thing on here, these all have a guard on the back of them. The pedestal grinders have a guard on them. Those guards have to be on this equipment for you to use it. Don't be taking my guards off. They're on there for a reason. And also the last thing, this is kind of a recommendation. This isn't a required safety piece, but some sort of respirator, because all of these you're going to get some really fine metal dust that you probably don't want to breathe into your lungs. So I'd recommend some sort of respirator. This is the one I wear. I think this one costs $20, but if that helps my health, that's well worth it. So we'll start out with grinders. There's three pretty main wheels that we're going to be using, and those are right here. So the first one is a cutoff wheel, and you can see kind of how skinny. Let me put that on the floor so you can kind of see it. You see how skinny that is? And as the name implies, this is used for cutting things. So you're going to use the edge of the wheel right here. This is the only face that's going to touch your material. You never want to grind against the face. You're just going to use the edge. These are super thin, so they're really flexible. And if one of these breaks on you, if you look up cutoff wheel explosion, you'll see lots of pictures of these that have exploded and gone into people. You'll be safe if you're using just the edge, but as soon as you start using the face, that's when people get in trouble. The next one here is just a standard grinding wheel. And this one, on the other hand, rather than grinding on the edge, you're going to grind on the face at about a 30-degree angle. Okay. So this is used for really quick metal removal. And as you can see, it's a little bit thicker. If I hold the cutoff wheel up next to it, you can see how much thinner the cutoff wheel is compared to this grinding wheel. So you're going to grind with the face of it about 30 degrees. And these will remove material really super fast. Then the last one, if you look at it, you can see it kind of has little flaps on it. Some people call these flap discs. Some people call them sanding discs. They do the same thing. So this is used for usually a secondary operation. After you use a grinding wheel, you'll grind, remove a lot of material really fast, and then you'll come back with the flap wheel and you will blend or polish your weld, kind of blend it over on itself. And also one thing to keep in mind on here, there is going to be a number on this wheel. So I can see on this one, it says 80 on it. So that tells me this is an 80 grit flat disc. The lower the number, the more aggressive. So if you had a 36 grit flat disc, that's going to remove material faster. If you have a 120 grit or a 220 grit flat disc, that's going to give you more of a polish. And sometimes what people will do is they'll grind with their grinding wheel, and then they'll do kind of like a 2 or 3 step process to get things polished the way they want. So they'll grind with the grind wheel, do maybe a 36 grit, they'll do a 80 grit, and then they'll usually do like a 120 or 220, depending on how deep the scratches are in their material. And that will leave you with a pretty perfect looking piece. So that's the 3 main wheels we're going to be using. The one other thing, so I was talking about grinders and guards. The only wheel I will allow you to not have a guard on is a flap disc, because this disc physically can't fall apart, whereas the cutoff wheel and the grinding wheel potentially could explode. So flapper disc is the only one I don't let the guard off of. Looking at the trigger on this, you can see there's a little lever on here. If that lever isn't depressed, you physically can't pull the trigger on this. So you have to depress that lever, and then you can pull the trigger down. As far as changing wheels on these, is as you use them, the wheels are going to wear out. They're fairly easy to change. If you look at the back on here, there's a button right here. And they're all kind of different, but they will have some form of button on them. Like on this one, the button's right here. So what you're going to do is push on that button, spin the wheel, and then you're going to turn the wheel counterclockwise. And that will loosen the nut off of here. You can take your wheel off, change it out. When you put the new wheel on, what you're going to do is you're going to set it on here, kind of move it back and forth. It'll self-center itself. And then if you look at the nut, you're going to see there's a side that sticks out and a side that's flush. I don't know if you can see that or not. You're going to put the flush side down towards the wheel. And you're just going to do the opposite of what you did to take it off. You're going to finger tighten the nut, make sure the button's still held in, and then you're going to turn the wheel clockwise. And just turn it hand tight. It doesn't have to be super tight. I've never had one of these come apart before. So that's our 3 main types of grinding wheels we're going to use. There's 2 others we will also use. And the first one is a wire wheel. And you can see this wire wheel is just flat. It's not a cup shape. And so this is used or designed to be used on the edge of the wheel. So if you're using this, you're going to have 2 hands on the grinder, like with all 4.5-inch grinders, and you're going to use this bottom half of the wheel and just move it in sweeping motions, just like this. Be really careful with baggy clothes, because this does have lots of little wires on it, and it will grab clothes and suck it in. The last one I have to show you is called a carbide burr. It's this little guy. And this one I keep in the tool room rather than keeping it out in the shop, because we don't use it very often. And what this is used for is removing anything on the inside of something. So if you have a piece of pipe or a piece of tube with a seam on it, a piece of square tube with the weld seam, you want to have another piece of square tube slide inside of it. You can reach in there with this and kind of grind that weld seam out. So here we have our Ellis belt sander. So I'm going to first show you how to change a belt on it, and then I'll show you how to safely use it. So the first thing I like to do before I'm changing the belt is push this emergency stop in.
And I also come to the back side of the machine here and unplug it. And then I just lay the cords right over the front of the machine like that, so I don't have to come to the back again. Next thing we're going to do is open the side cover. So it's unplugged, emergency stop's in, it can't turn on. Open the side cover. On the bottom here, right here, there's a lever. Let me adjust you down a little bit. There's a lever right here. When you pull that lever, it's going to take the tension off the belt. I'm going to pull the lever and just slide the belt off just like that. And on the back side of the machine here, I usually keep a couple different grit belts. And if you look on the inside of the belt, right there, it'll tell you what grit it is. So a 60 grit seems to work pretty well for taking material off really fast, whereas a 120 or an 80 grit would work for polishing a little bit better. So to put this back on, the first thing I'm going to do is put it on the back wheel. And then it's got to go, there's a little slot right here. It's got to go in that slot. Put it all the way on the back wheel. And then I'm going to pull the lever again. Slide it onto the front wheel. Slide it all the way onto the back wheel. So it's flush with the outer edges. And then the last thing I'm going to do here, and this is really important, I'm going to give that a spin by hand and make sure it spins. If it doesn't spin, it's really easy to put the belt when you put it on. If you put the belt underneath this right here, which is really easy to do, you see how it doesn't spin very easy? Stop, take the belt off, and make sure you put it in between the gap there. Another way you can check that is once you've got it on how you want it, if you open this up, if it's underneath that piece of metal, you won't see the belt right here. And you see how freely that spins? That's what we want. And the last thing I'm going to do is plug it in, turn my emergency stop so that's not on anymore. Then I'm going to go ahead and turn the machine on. The on-off is right here on the front of the machine. And then there's a little knob right here. I'm going to turn this knob just a little bit to adjust my tracking. So that's the side-to-side movement on this belt. So and usually the tracking is pretty close from belt to belt, but you'll notice it'll be a little bit off from a brand new belt to a used belt. So as you guys are using this, this does have a rest on it. The rest can be moved out of the way if you'd like to. If you're using the rest, you need to set whatever it is that you're grinding on the rest. If you aren't using the rest, you're only going to use from where the rest was sitting, so about halfway on the wheel, down. Okay? So if you aren't using the rest, you're going to be using the bottom of the wheel, just like this. If you tip your part up, it's going to grab and try and pull it out of your hand. So always keep whatever you're grinding on tipped down. And also you saw we can grind with the top of the belt sander also. If you're using this, use this edge right here towards the front of the grinder as a stop. So you're going to put your part up against that and then just move it back and forth as you sand. When you're done using the top, make sure you close it just like that. This belt sander also works great as a pencil sharpener. I use it frequently to sharpen our soapstones. It's just quick and easy, and it works really well. Okay, we're over here at the pedestal grinders now, and we also have a wire wheel over here. So I'm going to show you how to safely use that first. So anytime you're using this, you're going to use from the halfway point down, and you're going to angle whatever it is that you're grinding on down. So just like that. And as you're grinding, if you're going up and down, make sure it doesn't catch that top edge, because that'll pull it out of your hands. Now we're looking at the pedestal grinders. As you use these, you need to make sure these face shields right here are down to protect you from sparks. And also we have a tool rest right here. And between the tool rest and the grinding wheel, you want to make sure there's 1/8 of an inch. If that gets bigger than that, let me know and I'll adjust that in as these wheels grind down. On the pedestal grinders, you're only going to grind steel, no stainless or aluminum, because we don't want to hurt the wheels. As you're changing out a grinding wheel, one thing I like to do is tie a string around it like this and tap it with a piece of metal. And you hear how that kind of rings? That'll tell you that there's no cracks in the grinding wheel. If it just thuds, there's a crack in it, just chuck the wheel. You don't want to put that on, because that's a potential that the wheel might explode. Also, as you guys are grinding on stuff, your parts are going to heat up. We do have 2 cooling bins that just sit on the front of the grinders. If those are empty like they are right now, take them over to the sink, put some water in there so you can grind a little bit, and then you can dunk it in the cool water so you aren't burning your fingers.